The Lord of Chaos, Book 6 in the Wheel of Time series. I just finished reading this a couple of days ago, and I thought I would sort of stop and give my thoughts, I guess, of what I think of the series so far and how I'm enjoying it, and Book 6 in particular. It's about halfway, a little less than halfway through the series, so it seemed like a good time to stop. This isn't going to be like an in-depth review. Spoiler-free, general thoughts on how things are going for me so far. There may be super mild spoilers, but don't worry if you haven't read anything yet. It shouldn't be anything too bad. So first off, Book 6, The Lord of Chaos. I enjoyed it. In spite of it not having a lot of things that are happening throughout the book, like a lot of plot points aren't necessarily moving forward, I still found it really engaging. Because I think there was a lot of other stuff building throughout the story. So the tension was building in a lot of different ways. The different interested parties, I guess we can say, it started to get into their motives and kind of like why they are doing the things that they're doing and who they want to be with and why and all that sort of stuff. I thought that was kind of interesting. Maybe one of the least of the engaging sort of themes. I really enjoyed the discovery aspect of the one power of the dream world, of everything that's kind of going on when people learn how to use the abilities that they have or are discovering things. That's obviously part of the world building, but I find that really fun. That's maybe one of my favorite aspects of the book. There's a lot of suspense building. It feels like there's kind of, it's culminating, it's coming to something. There are people that are kind of trying to get to the same place, both maybe physically and kind of metaphorically, but that leads to just dialing up the suspense a little bit and the tension. And another theme in this book in particular is the weather, which is becomes pretty brutal, a little bit oppressive and almost claustrophobic throughout the book. And I think that's another sort of engaging theme that keeps it feeling interesting, even though, like I said, there's not like a major plot point that is necessarily happening throughout. The other thing is the very end of this book, when there finally is the main plot point from this book that eventually does happen, is maybe one of the most brutal or like violent and gory sections that I remember so far through the series. So it's pretty intense. Backing out a bit, why I decided I wanted to read it. So originally I was really enjoying the Stormlight Archive, a Brandon Sanderson series that is unfinished. And I kind of got tired of waiting between books and thought I wanted to find a series that's already been done. And then I found The Wheel of Time, which is not only one of the standards of the genre, but also co-written in part by Brandon Sanderson, who is an author I have liked so far. So thought I'd give it a shot. So here I am, Book 6, almost halfway through. Another one of the themes in the series that I've noticed so far is the dynamics between the main characters. There's a lot of, I guess what I'll call it is kind of trust, or lack of trust really in this case. They have all had major life events happen to them throughout the series so far. Various things, they've been given certain abilities or powers, or they've learned certain things about themselves or whatever, that they so far don't communicate to each other very well. Rand has some stuff going on in his head that he hasn't told anyone. Perrin has an ability that he hasn't talked to anyone about. Matt had something happen to him that's going on in his head that he hasn't told anyone about or talked to anyone about. I think the women in the story tend to do a little bit better about this. Egwene, Elaine, and Nynaeve do work together a bit more, but even then, it's like they're kind of like butting heads a lot throughout the way, or throughout that process. It's just an interesting way of like building the tension through lack of communication between the characters. Like in your typical romance movie, the two love interests will have some rift between them, and it's like if they literally just sat for 20 seconds and explained like, oh, this is what actually happened, there would be no tension throughout the movie. But I think that these books do a much better job of creating that in a realistic or relatable way, because these people have had these personal experiences they don't trust the other people with yet, and so they're holding all that close to their chest, and they're not like working together in a way that they could more efficiently if they talk to each other and trusted each other. But in the book, it makes sense kind of as to why they don't. Even though it's really frustrating, it's kind of frustrating in a good way, I guess. There's also a couple of things I've noticed through the first 6 books that I don't know, if it was superintended or not, but I've noticed that there's kind of some changes in the way that the characters are a little bit. For example, I think it was in book 3, Rand felt like he was like a feral animal. Like he was just kind of going completely bonkers. And then that like dialed way back in the books that came after that. Like he got too crazy too fast maybe, and then like maybe Robert Jordan had to like pull it back a little bit and rein it in. I don't know if that's the case or not. Maybe it ties back in later. But I just noticed that there was kind of a difference in him throughout that. I mentioned this a little bit already before, but the discovery process of like uncovering knowledge about the world in general has been another one of my favorite parts of the series. And these kids start out in like a small town, and as they go on their adventure, similar to the Lord of the Rings, they learn a lot about the world. So that part of the world building, or that style of world building, is really fun to me. It feels like I'm uncovering this like not necessarily forbidden knowledge, but just like gaining in wisdom sort of with the characters in the book, and that's a good time. I think for that reason, book 2, The Great Hunt, is probably my favorite book. I think it's where you kind of start to really uncover the rest of the world in the story, and it's a fun adventure where the characters kind of split apart and come back together, and they all have their little... That's really where some of these individual story arcs begin to take shape. Different things happen to all those characters in that book, and then they kind of all come back together at the end of it, and I thought that was probably my favorite book so far. Even though I've just finished only book 6, I've been reading this for probably more than a year. Part of that is because I took a little bit of a break between book 5 and 6 to read something else, and then did not go very quickly through that book. So it took me a long time to get back to the Wheel of Time. So it's been a long time. There's probably a lot of things that I don't remember, a lot of subtleties and nuances that have gone over my head, subplots and characters I can't keep track of. But overall, I don't really, it doesn't bother me. I know that there's hundreds of characters probably with each their own subplot of things going on, but to me it's fun to just understand what I've understood, follow the main characters, and enjoy the ride. So far so good. I would recommend it if you haven't read it. Here's a conundrum that doesn't really matter and isn't important. If you notice, I've got not the fun cover, but just the boring cover. And it matches all of my other ones up there. I've got, I don't know if you can see them, but back here is 1 through 9, and they all match. They're all the same, like, theme. The problem is they're the boring ones, and I want the cool ones with like the neat cover art and stuff, but I've already invested so far into the series with this style that I don't know if I should just keep going with it or if I should get a whole new set. That's pretty dumb. So yeah, thanks for watching. I don't know if that's helpful or if anybody cares, but if you watched this far, let me know. Leave a comment. That means we're friends. Okay, thanks, bye.